Okay, we are going to get started for today's program. Before we get started, as the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council Executive Director, I would just like to thank you all for being here. This really is the sort of kickoff to our new home here at the Iowa City Public Library. So we're very happy to be here, and we're very happy that you have joined us. And I hope that you enjoy today's program with the Mandela Washington Fellows and the incomparable Sunday Gosha.
Thank you so much, Peter. And like Peter said, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council program. This is the one summer program that we have, featuring guest speakers who are Mandela Fellows, Isabel, and they're going to introduce themselves in details, but if I call your name, can you just raise your hand? Isabel is going to be one of your speakers. Rudy is on the other side, and we have Shameer and Terrance. We want to thank them for coming, and to everyone who has joined us here in person and online today. Like I said, my name is Sunday Goshit, and I am an Iowa City Foreign Relations Council's board member, and I'm your host for today's program. The Iowa City Foreign Relations Council wants to acknowledge and thank its donors, members, sponsors, and partners for their support. And this includes the Iowa Arts Council through the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs, Humanities Iowa and the National Endowment for the Humanities, the University of Iowa International Programs, Honors Program, and the Public Policy Center, the Stanley UI Foundation Support Organization, Midwest One Bank, Taxes Plus, City Channel 4 for providing online access to ICFRC's programs along with the UI Library archives, and of course, our host today, the Iowa City Public Library. Iowa City Foreign Relations Council has adopted the Native American Land Acknowledgement prepared for the City of Iowa City's ad hoc Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Human Rights Commission. ICFRC recognizes that our home community in Iowa City now occupies the homelands of Native American nations, to whom we owe our commitment and dedication. The full text of ICFRC's acknowledgement is on its website at icfrc.org. Now, I would have loved to introduce the panelists, and I have something that has been written for me, but what we're going to do for today is to get them to introduce themselves, because they're going to do a better job of saying who they are. And then we'll have a list of questions that we'll ask them. And so it's going to be kind of panel, and I will be moderating. And we'll try to make sure that we have enough time for people who are attendees to be able to ask them questions too. I assure you that the credentials of the people sitting in front here can be very intimidating. I've had the opportunity to meet them about 3 times, and I think the continent of Africa is blessed to have them here. So thank you so much, and I think I'll just go straight away, and we would ask them to introduce themselves first. And I want you to give us an introduction of who you are, the country you're from, what is your professional calling, and what you do as far as the Mandela Fellowship is concerned. I'll start with you, Samir.
Okay. Hi, I'm just testing. Is it good? Can you all hear me? Hello, everyone. I'm Shameer. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the organizers to set up this. It's a big privilege. I need to say Sunday has given us more credit than is due, but we are humbled to be here, to be on this occasion to speak on Mandela Day. So I am from Mauritius. For those who don't know where Mauritius is, because we are so small, if you look at the map and you see Madagascar, we are just on the right. So will not miss us. If not, it's very hard to find us on most maps. And yes, it's a small island. There is a quote which some people deny, but I think it's true. Mark Twain said that when God created Mauritius, he created it first, and then was inspired, and then he created paradise after that. So just a little jewel in the Indian Ocean. So as far as what I do, my background, I'm an engineer, I'm a designer, I'm an advocate for sustainability, but above all, I'm a social entrepreneur. And I have co-founded an organization called Minority Africa, where we embolden marginalized community on the continent through storytelling. And we cover multiple groups, people from ethnic minorities, gender minorities, religious. We also look at people with disability. And what our aim through Minority Africa at the start when we started is to really give a voice to those who normally are not heard. And in mainstream media, you won't find the stories that we covered, what they are doing in their community, how they're impacting, and how they're growing. Because every individual, as far as we believe, they matter. And my here coming to the fellowship is very much around going forward with an initiative around diversity, equity, and inclusivity, because there's a high need of that in our continent. I believe that through these integration, we can really bridge the gap in understanding what is acceptance and how do we create a space for belonging. So that is more or less what I do. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go to Isabel.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Isabel. I'm from Angola. And thank you for being here with us and invited us for being here. I am a lawyer by profession and a corporate lawyer, mostly. And I am a member of the executive coordination of Onjango Feminista. It's a women's organizations that advocates for the rights of women and girls in Angola. Since I returned to Angola after my studies, I could see that women are we are the most population, but we are the poorest population. We are in the bottom of the pyramid. So I joined to Onjango Feminista because we really need to do something to get more girls in schools, to talk about sexual and reproductive rights, to give the awareness to girls that they can go to do an engineer degree, because it's very few girls do that type of courses. And what brought me here was my project. It's a digital publisher. I am trying to adventure myself in this project, and I came here to learn how I can implement it, because in Angola it's very difficult for a writer to publish their stories, and the books are too expensive too, and we don't have many culture of reading, so that's why I want to start this project. Thank you.
Isabel. Terrance?
Okay. My name is Terrance Mawanga. I'm from Zimbabwe. It's a country in Southern Africa, a wonderful country. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the Victoria Falls of Zimbabwe. Oh, actually, there's a lot of people. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, for those who have never been, I think you should come through and see everything that we have to offer. Okay, so in essence, I'm a guy who loves to tell stories. I prefer to identify myself as a writer. I don't typically like to say I'm an author. I'm just a writer. I believe in spitting my mind through the medium of writing, and just creating something that's beautiful, something that informs, something that entertains, and oftentimes, something that rebels against convention. I'm just a believer that we can change our world one story at a time. So, aside from writing, also a big passion. I have a big passion for technology, and these days I'm actually looking at applying technology in the field of healthcare because of a certain personal issue that I encountered a few years ago. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm here for the fellowship, to build a medical technology platform, particularly for the marginalized people in Zimbabwe. But the idea is to really go throughout the African region, especially for chronic ailments such as hypertension, diabetes, and eventually to things like breast cancer and other ailments in that sort of light. I also believe in the empowerment of young people through the medium of entrepreneurship. So I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship capacity development. So it's something that I do unapologetically. I've done that ever since I was in university, and it's something that I continue to push through different platforms. So when I'm not writing stories, I'm writing code through for my medical technology startup, or you'll find me talking about entrepreneurship as it pertains to young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terrance. Rudy?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy Ossia from Gabon. Thank you for receiving us this evening. So I am an engineer by profession. I have an engineering degree in electrical engineering, but I'm currently working in oil and gas. And apart from that, I am a home furniture entrepreneur by calling. So my goal through my enterprise, Nda Africa's Home, is to promote the African cultural legacy through home design, and also to empower all the small businesses thriving in this sector. I work with a wide community of African artists and artisans, and also suppliers, and so far we are doing good. Apart from that, I'm also a storyteller. My goal is to change the narrative, the African narrative, through storytelling. So we put our focus on the young leaders making an impact in their direct or indirect environment. And so far, we've been able to collect more than 20 testimonies, very interesting. I hope through this project, I am able to encourage the diaspora, the African diaspora that would like to come back but doesn't know how to identify opportunities in Africa, and also give hope to those that are still in the continent but want to leave because they can't see opportunities too. So apart from that, I'm also very active in the youth empowerment. Lately, I've been encouraging young girls to be strongly involved in technical careers, because I do it myself. And as a woman working in a very masculine environment, I know how it feels to be the only woman in a meeting room taking critical decision. And I simply feel that if I found a way to be here, it is my responsibility to make a way for other women, other girls to be there too. Yeah, that's it.
Well, you guys have proved my statement right. This is Mandela Day. This is Mandela Fellowship, and that is why you're here. I want you to tell me, and I'll start with you, Rudy, to tell me, what does the Mandela Fellowship, Mandela legacy mean to you as a person?
Okay, so Mandela's legacy to me means first humility. Because when I think about Nelson Mandela, a great man, he had everything, the connection, the charisma, but still he decided to step down in 1999 and let another person lead the South African country. For me, this is the first quality that I see from Nelson Mandela. And also I see the courage and the resilience to fight for your values, to fight for we know that one of the values that was driving Nelson Mandela was unity, equity, and it is very fundamental in a human's life. And the last but not the least, forgive but don't forget. Not because it is not coming from a place of anger, it is coming from a place of wisdom. You don't forget so you don't reproduce the same mistake again. This is Mandela's legacy to me.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, when I was looking at his legacy, there's one thing that stood out for me. There's a statement that the Secretary General of the United Nations said on occasion of Mandela Day yesterday. So Antonio Guterres proclaimed rather poetically, at least in my own opinion, he said something to the effect that Nelson Mandela was a giant of our time, a leader of unparalleled courage and towering strength and achievement, and a man of quiet dignity and deep humanity. I feel he said it all when he said that. And that for me is what Mandela's legacy means. He was the moral compass, not only of his generation, but of this generation as well. And what he did is something that I think will live forever. I mean, he fought to decimate the segregationist, imperial, colonial regime that was there in South Africa, you know, the apartheid regime. But when everything had been said and done, after spending 27 years in prison, he still was able to exercise a great deal of forgiveness. He also pretty much, you know, he's the flag bearer of reconciliation, really. That's what he speaks to. He speaks of his legacy. He talks of tolerance. He talks of unity and compassion and love and all of those things. So for me, I feel that is what Nelson Mandela's legacy is all about. Thank you.
For me, it's tolerance and forgiveness. I think at that time, this was revolutionary, and I like everything that is revolutionary and disruptive. It was something new, and it reminds me what we are doing in this world, which is improve ourselves as humanity. I really believe on that. We are building a path. That's why we have these old generations, and for me, although we continue to have problems, we are better, and we are learning. So this is what he wanted, and for me, humanity improve as human being. It's the most important thing, and what I learned from him. That's it.
Shameer, I'm sure you have something to say about Mandela's legacy.
It's hard to top what my co-panelist has said, but for me, when I think of Mandela's legacy, and I think of someone who has spent more than 25 years in prison, and I had the opportunity to, when I was in South Africa, to visit the Apartheid Museum, and they have a replica of his prison cell there. it's a very small room. It's very small, and there is a window there. And it just reminded me about the documentary that Desmond Tutu said about Mandela is he was not only a prisoner in a jail, but he was a prisoner of conscience. And in that time, if we had to put ourselves in this place, he said, like, normally what emerged from that prison could have been someone with anger, someone resentful. But what came out from there was a man of compassion, a man that looked beyond his own suffering. And he said something really beautiful, that it was, you know, when he was able to connect beyond that, it was as if his soul and his body just became one. And for me, that was really touching in how really he demonstrated a resilience through that time, trying time. And I look up to that, because as a young leader, would I be able to do that? And that's, like, for me, that's a really, really powerful inspiration, yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the word leadership there. When President Obama thought of this whole idea of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, he was looking for an opportunity to raise a group of young Africans who would become leaders. And that's the question. And I think that the reason is because you would all agree with me that one of the biggest problems that African countries have is that of leadership. And so the question is, what do you think has been, would you say that Mandela has influenced or plays an influence on the country, and particularly in your countries, in the continent, and particularly in your countries? Is there anything you would say that, you know, this is the role or the influence that Nelson Mandela has on the continent or on your country, in your country? Yes.
I think, yeah, it again ties up to the legacy that he left for us. And I would echo with what Sunday is saying, like, one of the biggest challenge we have in Africa is a lack of leadership. And we as young leader, we question that. We ask ourselves, why is this so? And how can we change the narrative? And every time as an individual, I like to look at who can inspire me, who is there that can show me a way that things can be done differently. And he has been the figure that has inspired through different ways. It's not totally directly in countries at times, but just by his whole presence, it has rippled across the continent. And just this fellowship itself, being named the Mandela Washington Fellowship, is already a statement that his impact is already having an effect on us. And coming through this program, we have felt it ourselves. I can speak for myself, but I can also believe that all the leaders that are in the room, we have felt this way. It's on a daily basis, we are inspired by each other's commitment to what we are doing, to what we aspire to do, and how can we just take this step one more step forward. Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Sorry, I wasn't stopping you.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I think Nelson Mandela and our first president, Agostinho Neto, they were contemporary persons, and they shared the same ideas of a free Africa, a free people. So I see that in my people, although we don't see in our leaderships, but I see it in my people, in my colleagues, in my friends, that every day when we have some political issue, we are in the streets talking, fighting. We are in young girls and boys that build and create community libraries. in Angola. We are in all the girls who go to the hospitals and help people who are sick, or go to the prisons. We are in our bar association when we go to the prisons, and we do we help those people who are in prison for a long time. So this is how I see the influence, because the values are there: the tolerance, the acceptance, the forgiveness, the resilience. It's the way I see Nelson Mandela. It's in those leaders that I see this legacy. So that's it for me.
I'm sure you have an interesting perspective coming from Zimbabwe.
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, but maybe I want to just sort of add to what especially Isabel has talked about, the idea of our leaders having been getting along. Probably, let me look at it from a historical viewpoint, and maybe I'll shift to more of a social perspective, and then end with something that I feel is much more personal. So from the historical side of things, I know that Nelson Mandela joined the African National Congress, which effectively was the movement that was fighting against apartheid in South Africa in 1944. So, and he grew through the ranks, and he became a leader of their youth movement. So really was passionate about that. And so Zimbabwe, being a neighbor of South Africa, was actually fighting against a similar kind of societal malady, if I may call it that. And so there was a lot of rapport between our leaders. And later on, because ANC was established first before our own liberation movements followed, so there was a lot of interplay, a lot of interchange of ideas. And so when Zimbabwe eventually had its own two main wings, the Zebra and the Zanla forces that were fighting against the Rhodesian forces, that's the colonial government of the time. And so effectively there was a lot of interchange, and Mandela was key to those sort of discussions that took place, and there was a lot of exchange of wisdom. And even though the ANC was eventually banned in 1960, it continued to operate underground, and so it continued to assist Zimbabwe in its own fight. And so Zimbabwe's fight for its own independence started around 1966, I think, up until independence in 1980. And during that time, there continued to be a lot of interchange, up until, of course, Nelson Mandela went to prison in 1963. But still, his influence was very palpable, and he continued to share a lot of his wisdom and insights. And that continued even after independence. Then coming more towards the social perspective, Nelson Mandela, once he was released in 1990 and he became president in 1994, the first president of South Africa in 1994, one of his key issues was the idea of trying to mitigate the scourge of HIV and AIDS, because it was a big thing during the 1990s especially. And so what was very interesting, what was happening in Africa during that time, and I guess across the world as well, was that there were a lot of people, even influential people, who were denialists, really, who pretty much said HIV and AIDS was not a thing, including some very prominent figures. And so he was at the forefront of that. He was pushing for more, for people to acknowledge that HIV and AIDS was actually a thing, and that we needed to follow medical advice, really, to survive that sort of storm. And so even though he only served one term and he left office, that sort of spark that he created continued, from then onwards. Because I feel the best leaders in the world, they not only hold on to power, but they are able to create other leaders as well. They're able to create a movement that can outlast them. And now we have seen drastic improvements in HIV care in Africa, and the prevalence rates are actually dropping. So in Malawi, for example, there's been a drop by 73%. And then we look at Zimbabwe, Zambia, and other countries, it's about 41%, and I think Eswatini was something like 37%. And then when we go to West Africa, I think Ghana and Burkina Faso, some of those countries that are leading. And so if you look at those sort of, if you trace all of it, it has something to do with Nelson Mandela. And when he came out of prison, I mean, during the 1990s, people were listening to him, and so that influence was very much part of that. And then, like I said, from a more personal viewpoint, and sort of echo what Isabel was saying, people my age and other people who are slightly older, we know what Nelson Mandela represented. You know, there are political differences in Zimbabwe, there are political differences in other countries, there are business differences, there are tribal differences. People can fight along, many lines because of many issues, but that sort of combustion, it continues to take center stage, and I feel all of it is somehow tied to the example that Nelson Mandela gave us. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, so the influence of Nelson Mandela in Gabon is very strong because the former president, Omar Bongo, former Gabonese president, and Nelson Mandela had a very strong relationship, to the point that when he was in prison, when he was in jail, Gabon was supporting the ANC and also the Nelson Mandela's family. And when he was released in February 1991, Gabon was part of the first countries that Nelson Mandela went to visit. So even today, we still maintain a great relationship with South Africa. We still have free visa access in both ways. We have schools that are named after Nelson Mandela. This is just to show that on a national point of view, there is a huge influence of Nelson Mandela, and the good thing is that we perpetuate it in both ways. And in a continental point of view, I must say that it's a good example. We all see the way Nelson Mandela has impacted people with such a charisma. We see even the way today African countries manage their diplomacy. We can see that it was encouraged by Nelson Mandela, because this approach that he made, Gabon is a small country in Central Africa, but still he came to visit us first, which means that you have to keep your friends close and your helpers closer. And this is a good way, a good leadership approach when you want to build and maintain relationship, especially with other countries. So that's just the only point that I want to add to build on what my fellows has already said. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, from every indication, all of you have your professions, but you have started the process of social engineering and looking at social issues and established, some of you have already started organizations even before you became fellows, the Nelson Mandela Washington Fellows. And that means a lot. It says a lot about who you are individually and the way you perceive the problems in society generally and in your countries. Having been Mandela Fellows now, how would you say that the legacy of Mandela would influence what you're going to be doing with your organizations when you get back home, in your communities and probably in the country? We see you as our future leaders. Can I start with you? Yes.
In Angola, we have an expression. We say that, I will say in Portuguese, then I will translate. We say that o pessoal é político. It means that what is personal is also a political matter. So for us, and what I learned in these 7 years that I'm in this organization, is that what we eat, the water that we drink, if kids are going to school or not, if our bodies are tired, if we have access to sexual and reproductive rights, if we have a job, if a woman is from 6 in the morning until 11 in the night selling products to give their children a meal, For me, this is a political matter. So, and this is a way that we need to look for our realities, and we need to understand that we need to practice citizenship, political participation, and this is what me and my colleagues and my friends at our organizations do. We need to understand that things will not change if we don't participate. And it's not just a matter of voting in the elections. We need to have this awareness of the citizenship. This is the main thing. I think this, for me, is the thing that is more important for me. It's this conscience of citizenship and political participation. Yes. I'm going to read something. It's very good thing. For me, true reconciliation and tolerance take place when we all have the opportunity to exercise our citizenship and our political participation. That's it.
Terrance.
Okay. Okay. For me, it's very, very humbling, I feel, to talk about Nelson Mandela and then to talk about how his work influences mine, because he left such an indelible legacy. So something that I found particularly interesting, because I'm in the technology space, is that, across Africa, so many African countries have been inspired by his example, such that they've gone to great lengths to honor him. In Nigeria, in Burkina Faso, in Tanzania, I think there are institutes either for technology or for science that are named after him. And he himself as well, in 1996, he opened the Academy of Science in South Africa that was dedicated to the advancements of science, especially for marginalized groups in Africa. And so for me, I feel it really resonates with me and the work that I'm trying to do with my organization, Utano for You, which is a medical technology company. So the idea is to try and use technology, I guess, to try and bridge that gap between those who are able to access healthcare in major cities and those that are not so able to do so. I feel it's something that I'm taking from the example of Nelson Mandela. And then something that was also wonderful about Nelson Mandela was that he established the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, which was essentially meant to help kids from underprivileged backgrounds to access education, because education is such a powerful weapon. And his whole idea wasn't just for kids to get education, but for them to actually chart their own course and to get careers that would be able to help them become the next generation of leaders that are empowered mentally, socially, economically. And so I'm taking that sort of viewpoint through Impetus Infinity, which is my social enterprise, where I look to empower young people, including high school students who in essence are kids, particularly in the province that I come from, Mashonaland West Province. So that's the idea, to try and empower them so that they too can become the leaders of tomorrow. And then through the writing front, I loved his autobiography. It's called Long Walk to Freedom, where he talks about his journey. But something that I found very interesting is that he talks about the singular joys of life. I mean, growing up, and he grew up in the Eastern Cape, in an impoverished family. In fact, it was just a regular family in Africa. So many people have the same socio-economic. They belong to the same socio-economic class. He talks about going out, using his slingshot, it's effectively for hunting birds. It's a thing in Africa, especially in rural areas. It was fun to sort of read that. And for me as a writer as well, I feel it's the same sort of impetus that I feel I need to tell African stories that are able to inspire other people. And so his example has played a large role in that regard. And before I finish, I want to talk about one thing that I feel is very strong. the idea of Nelson Mandela, when I look at it and at his legacy, really was to establish institutions that last, and institutions that are multifaceted. When I look at everything that he established, most of it is still in existence. And so, being someone who's worked, who's working in trying to empower other people, something that I've realized is that there's this idea, or this ideal to sort of romanticize donor funding, okay? So there's a classical example that I like to use sometimes. I came across it somewhere, and probably to sort of explain why I do what I do and to tie it to Nelson Mandela, okay? And so there was this entrepreneur, okay, in this village in Africa, and they were doing well. They were selling eggs. That was their business. And because they felt they had a social responsibility to their fellow people, from time to time, they would give free eggs to their community. That was their act of service. And so this young man did this for a while, and he continued to grow steadily. And then there came a certain donor funding agency. And then the donor funding agency realized that these people were poor, and they were getting eggs from this entrepreneur. And so what they decided to do, in essence, was to provide a large amount of eggs, let's say for 6 months, because that's what their grant was able to support. And so all the people, they had eggs for 6 months. But then the 6 months came to an end, and the grant was actually over. And then the donors actually left. And after they left, what had happened was that during that 6 months, this entrepreneur's business had effectively folded because he had no one to sell his eggs to. And so their intentions were pure, but they'd actually caused a lot of problems. And now this entrepreneur is no longer has a business. People have lost their jobs. And these people who used to get free eggs from time to time, they're no longer there. And so when I look at that sort of example for me, that's why I work in trying to empower young people so that they can build institutions that last. Because I feel that's something that Nelson Mandela has all tried to push. And so that's the idea. The idea isn't to bring solutions to young people and say, oh yeah, you should do this. But the idea is to do something that I feel also resonates with what we've been doing through this fellowship, a customer discovery interview. Even if you are coming with an entrepreneurship solution, it should be something that addresses a problem that someone is actually facing. And so when I do this through Impetus Infinity, when I try to help others establish their own businesses or write their own stories through books, through poetry, and through other means, I always try to make sure that they own their own narrative, because it's always better that way. Yeah, thank you.
Rudy, Mandela's influence on your project.
Okay. So before I deep dive, I must say that before doing this fellowship, I used to do things, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I was doing things from passion, instincts, but since I started this fellowship, now I know why I did this, how to do it better, and most importantly, I know how to name it properly. For me, it's very important because there was a point in my life when I decided that I should stop being a victim and I should start being an actor of my life. And for me now, the idea is to influence other people so they can take that ownership too and decide to become actors of their own lives. And I do it in every aspect of my professional or personal life. So the first thing, promoting diversity and inclusion. First of all, through this engineering career that I have, by including more female in technical fields, and also in my entrepreneurship career, because I am connecting a wide network of African artists and artisans, which means that there is a huge cultural diversity. But instead of using it to divide us, we use it to unify us. We capitalize on it. We can make one item with 5 raw material coming from 5 different countries. This is how I carry Mandela's legacy on my business. And also, on the social aspect, I want to continue empowering the most vulnerable. I started doing it before. I didn't even have all the tools and the skills that I have now. But honestly, I just think nothing happens just like that. Everything is meant for a reason, for a purpose. I've been in a situation of extreme vulnerability. And I was approached by a person that offered me to join, I can say, a human trafficking network. But I was lucky enough to be educated. I had a degree. I had a supportive family. At that time, I just lost my father, but I had my mother. She was ready for me, no matter what happened. I had a choice. That's why I had the option to say no and go back to Gabon. At that time, I just graduated from the engineering school in France, and as I lost my father, I didn't see myself going back because I lost a very strong support in my professional career. So for me, I was willing to look for all the possibilities to extend my duration in France and eventually work there. But once I was approached by that person, honestly, something went wrong in my head. And thank God, I was able to make the good choice and go back to Gabon. A few months later, I started working with sex workers, like giving them advices and influencing them to change that career, that job that they were doing, to capitalize on other skills. So today, some of them are selling products. Some of them went back to school. So for me, if I'm just able to change one person's life, it's already good enough. And when I look at how Nelson Mandela sacrificed his own life, more than 20 years in jail, so that more people can benefit. Today, to be honest, I'm happy I have such a great example, because we need more of that. Let's be actors in our life and in other people's life, so they can be empowered as well. Yeah, that's it for me.
That's very inspiring, very, very inspiring. Samir?
For me, I think the influence that this fellowship would bring, and I will tie it down to the work that I'm going to do with DEI. And I'll start with diversity. While the concept of diversity is most of the time misunderstood, when we speak of diversity, we think race, we think ethnic, we think gender, but it is also diversity in thought. And today we had a session where Isabel was with us, but we had also other fellows, and we were trying to solve a problem. It was a health problem. And while our experience back home is very much different, we all wanted to find a solution. Yet there was a point where we couldn't really grasp that everyone has a different kind of experience and a different kind of life. We might read about it, we might think we know about it, but until we meet the people who have lived it on a daily basis, we cannot really comprehend that. And while we do that, we need to also be conscious to listen first, rather than jump on and say, this is how you should do it, or this is how it should be done. So when I look at diversity, it's a diversity of opinion, bringing it on there so that we can allow space to do that, allow people to be able to say really what it means to be in a particular situation. As for I'll go with inclusivity first before I go in equity. Inclusivity for me, with the work that we are doing with Minority Africa, we have seen a lot of challenges, especially for people with disability, where opportunities are not given to them on a continent where we have approximately 80 million people with disability. Right now, with this, I'm working closely with an organization that works with people with, who are visually impaired. And we designed a collaborative platform that would allow people to connect and share these marginalized people's stories, different newsroom. But I also made a mistake, and that was not intentional, but it was because of circumstance. We had to build this system and get it out there. And as entrepreneur, we all know we have to get to market or else we won't make it. And the mistake that we did is we did not think how inclusive is the platform. And it's only when I met with that lady and I spoke with her that it just struck me immediately. It's like, how could we have not thought about it? While we ourselves, we do write our stories about these marginalized community, how could we have omitted that? And that just got me thinking that in our day-to-day activity, while we think we are being inclusive, at times we forget what it means. So intentional thinking has to be at the heart of inclusivity. And I would say it's more like a habit. Waking every day in the morning and being like intentional about, am I being inclusive in the way I'm approaching the day, with the people I'm working with the work I'm doing, with everything that I am. And for the final part, what I would say for equity, and this is a story about a friend of mine, which I'm currently helping to coach for her. She's applying for a Chevening scholarship, so I'm really hopeful that she's going for that. Because she told me on a personal basis, but I'm sure that she wouldn't mind me telling you what she went, like the impact that she did, is she grew up in a family where they told her, like, you know, women are not meant to have a voice. Just go with what is done or said, and that's it. And for a long time, she told me that really made her a very timid person. She couldn't vocalize. She wouldn't go into spaces and just be in a little bubble. But then, in her workplace, something happened. She was sexually harassed by one of the workers verbally, and that was the snapping point in her life. She told me, like, you know, I could have let it go away because that's what everyone around her told her. You know, let it go. It happens. He just didn't mean it. You know, he just say that way. He says that to everyone. And she told me, I don't know what happened at that moment, but I stood up and I said, enough is enough. I can't continue enduring this. And it took her some time to complain about it. She had to face, just imagine, she was just starting in the organization. She had to sit with the CEO of the organization. She had to sit with the manager of the organization. And to tell you, the manager of the organization was an HR and she was a woman. She herself told her, let it go. And she said, would you have let it go if it was your daughter in my place? And that really transformed her. And today she's doing really amazing work. She has her podcast that she is helping other women come out to speak and to really speak about these issues that are not there. And when she told me that, I told her, like, you know, you have such a skill, because she felt like, oh no, I don't have the necessary skill, or I don't have the leadership story to be selected for these things. And I told her, this what you have here is really, really strong power. You took an initiative that not only help you to challenge what was happening to you, but inspire other women in her workplace who then had the space to come forward and tell her, you know, we also went through this, but we didn't have the courage to do that. So for me, like, when we speak of equity, it's not only a balance of good, but also like, how do we create these spaces to do that? So I think with this fellowship and the interaction and hearing from every fellows what they have gone through, their experience, it is shaping me to think differently and to go and have a better impact when I go back. Yeah, thank you.
So this is very interesting. Each time we get to the last person, you link us to the next phase of our discussion. You've talked about challenges. And most of those challenges in Africa are either going to be institutional challenges, cultural challenges, and political, social, and all of those. And those challenges are going to be there when you go back. The fact that you've been to Mandela, they're not suddenly going to disappear. You go back and face those challenges as you want to go and actually practice some of the things you've heard us say here. Would you mind sharing some of the challenges you see ahead and how you think that the legacy of Mandela and the Mandela Fellowship is going to help you? You started talking about some of those already, so. But I would like to hear some of the challenges that you foresee, probably you have faced, and how you think you're going to face them now.
I think the first challenge that I would see us facing going back is acceptance. What I mean by acceptance is coming back to what I was saying earlier in terms of how can we see the difference in each other, but yet accept it? Because we come from 20 different countries. We have multiple different languages. Even though some of us are from Francophone countries, some of us speak English, our culture is totally different. The food we eat are different. The way we go about our dress, you could see like today everyone is dressed in their own cultural, it's different. Yet it's a beauty also. And while I don't want to be controversial and say like some people, but I'll just put it as some people try to use it as a way to create division. Mm-hmm. This is also a possibility for us to create unity. And how we can do that is by looking at each other and saying at the core, and I think Isabel touched on that earlier, is we are all human beings. We are all bound as one in our sense. Yes, we have differences, we have all these things, but that's what makes us so beautiful. That's what makes the beauty of all of this thing. But the challenge that we will have is how do we get people to accept that? And for me, I think that is what the work that I'm doing is going to go through that. And that is why the DEI that we are putting in place is not only for organizations, but it's also at the individual level to really get people to understand. And why we are trying to go for organization, because I'm sure everyone here, we have spent most of our life at work. Our organization shapes most of the way we think and how we go about. If you have a culture that is oppressive, we will be oppressive going back home. If we have a culture that empowers, we will empower. If we have a culture of acceptance, we will accept. So it's all about how do we bridge this and get this challenge there. And that's the challenge that I'm taking on myself. It's a big one, I know. I will be facing a lot of roadblock, but I believe that this is where we can start breaking these systemic barriers in our society and get to the point to now really influence people and influence there. Because if you're able to do that at an organization, regardless if it is a profit, non-profit, or anything, you are able to inspire a person to go there. I don't know if I can say that, but I remember watching one thing about the chain of scream command, where the manager would be screaming at his employee would be screaming at the intern, and probably the intern goes back home and scream at the child, and the child is actually the manager. Oh, no, the child could be like at a school, and it just goes back to the manager. So it's just a vicious cycle that keeps going on. But if we break the cycle and just show love and compassion at our workplace, then these things won't happen. And we would just go through that. I'm trying to do that in my organization. And at times I feel that I'm not doing enough. But if we're intentional about it, I think we can overcome this challenge.
Any challenge to share that you think we can?
I think we have too many challenges.
Agreed.
But when I think about these challenges, one word comes to my mind, that is privilege. We need to use our privileges to help other people, and we need to recognize that we have those privileges, and sometimes let it go, because sometimes when we have to do something to change, and we spoke about it this week in one of our classes, when we need to do some changes, we need to let it go our privileges. And this is, for me, it's very clearly, if I live alone and I have a person who works with me at my house, she helps me, but I know that she has her necessities. She needs a day off in the week because she has children. She needs to take them to the hospital or go to a school meeting. If I don't give her, it's not give because it's her right. If I don't understand that I need to respect her right, I'm not doing anything. So when we have a couple and we are at home, we are two, when a man intends that he doesn't need to do anything at home, he is not recognizing his privilege, and he has more time to work, to improve in his career than the women. So he has more privilege, and he needs to understand it and let it go, for both of them share this privilege. And now doing a link with my project, the books project, I had the privilege to read books since I was a kid. And those books are what I am today as a person. So I have this privilege, but I need to use it to create the awareness to our government, first of all, because they need to understand that all those kids that are out of the education system need to have this privilege. So they need to let it go, their privileges, to let all these people have the privileges that they deserve to. That's it.
Terrance.
Okay, yeah, I feel like my colleagues have said a lot of great stuff. Okay, maybe I'll just talk about more business-related challenge, I guess, something that I feel all of us as Africans share. Of course, the economic climate won't be easy for us when we go back home in order to operationalize our businesses and our ideas, of course. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make it work. Something that I like is the idea of synergies. We've been building a lot of collaborations as fellows between ourselves, and hopefully we can continue to do that so that we can deal with the issues that we're facing, the economic issues, the finance issues. I think we'll be able to overcome those challenges. So just to add, I had the opportunity to intern at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa for a little while. So because of that, I was able to pick up a few issues related to trade and issues of tax policy and the like. Something that I found very, very pertinent, and I feel all of us as young Africans can leverage on, is the African Continental Free Trade Area. Yes, we have our own challenges as countries, but when we come together through the African Continental Free Trade Area, I think we'll be able to do a lot of good, really. It has recently been ratified, and most African countries have signed on to it, and so it promises a lot of great returns. We're talking about trade facilitation measures, the jettisoning of tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade. And if all of us as young Africans can go back and play a part in making sure that it actually becomes operational, because there are still issues with it. Something that I would like for the fellows to look into is there's something called the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. It's supposed to make it easy for me in Zimbabwe to trade with the ITF in Togo, or with my brother Romanas in Namibia. But there are still issues that need to be sorted out. So sometimes it may mean we may have to lobby with our central banks, because it's an issue that is higher up than we can actually work on our own. But if we can do it together, if we can lobby with one voice, I think we'll be able to push together. And it's a matter of working together. It's not a matter of fighting. It's a matter of working with those people who are in positions of power so that we can start to leverage those leverage on that sort of thing. I've heard a lot of people talking about collaboration, synergies, especially my guys who are doing honey. Some of them are talking about exporting to each other, and I'm like, this is exciting, this is wonderful. But when you have a thriving single market in Africa, to make everything even smoother. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so just to build up on the interesting things that they already said, I'm going to mention corruption as one of the top challenges that we face, first of all as individuals, but also as business owners. And my only comment on that is that as young leaders, we choose to do not compromise ourselves. So we choose to be compliant and to do not corrupt ourselves or corrupt anyone. And also, he mentioned a very good point about the trades. It's very interesting because currently, from what I know, it's in region. So you have the central part, the eastern, the western, the southern. And the idea for us is to go beyond it, above it, to be able to reach other fellows, other businesses, even though we are not from the same region. I think that we will benefit from it a lot. And there's something interesting that we probably don't want to emphasize, but it's still very important. It's the political status of most of our African countries. Even though we are not directly involved into politics, government is still a key stakeholder in everything we do. And we noticed that in many countries, we have abuse of power. Recently, in 2020, we had the EndSARS movement in Lekki Tollgate, where a lot of Nigerians died. We have a lack of political transition in Gabon, in Togo, and in other African countries. We have a lot of issues, and the only thing that I must say about it is, I understand it's difficult, but I would like us to prefer negotiation and reconciliation as Nelson Mandela did, instead of going to war. Because let's think about it, they are stronger. They have been there before. They did it from the past year. They have the network. So as young entrepreneurs, when we go back sometime, we want to raise awareness, we want to denunciate. We have that energy, that power. I just want to remind to all of us that we need to stay calm and consider the negotiation first instead of going to war with people that are stronger than us. That's it.
Well, I just have one more question, and I'll open it up because I know that people are itching to ask you many questions. In 1 or 2 sentences, what's your impression of Iowa City?
Should I start?
Yeah, start from you.
Me. My impression of Iowa City, you say 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that you could speak, I know it would go into volumes. Let's keep it to 1 or 2 sentences.
Wonderful experience and network in quality and quantity. Yeah.
Okay. For me, I come from a very small town in Zimbabwe, just outside Harare. And so when I came to Iowa City, I just sort of felt like I was back home. Yeah. So, thank you.
For me, I like small towns, so for me it was perfect. I like trees and see green in everywhere, so I am in the perfect place. And I learned a lot from the professors and all the people that I met, the interns, the people that we met in networking, people much older than us doing so many things and with so much energy. So I'm feeling very happy for being here. Thank you.
And you, Shameer?
I would say, like Terrance, I feel like home because this is our summer basically back home. So yeah, Iowa is a very peaceful place, and I was speaking to Ndagu yesterday when we were coming back, and we were just thinking like we're going to miss it a lot because it just has a serenity around that, the place, the people, and also, I would say like the people here are very caring and intentional in terms of, I think you mentioned connection and networking. Yeah, they take care and they listen and they make, I would say, extra effort to get you to where you want to be. Sometimes which it takes us aback because you're like, oh wow, why are you doing so much? Because so for me it's really, really been wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll hand you guys over to the audience, and we are now going to move into the question and answer portion of this program. And so what we'll do is we start the question and answer program, but before then, we want to thank all our members and donors for their support. And if you would like to join the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council or make gifts to support its programs, please go to ICFRC.org and check out one of the signed stations in the room today, and check out one of those. So we'll go into the question and answer session. That was the first time I saw.
Yeah, and I've got a microphone.
Oh, you have a microphone.
I'll come right around, yeah.
Since we're in a major agricultural state, I was interested in having each of you comment on the role of agriculture in your respective countries.
Any of you can start. Yeah.
In my country, in Angola, we have small people doing agriculture in small
scale.
small scale to subsistence. Yes, subsistence. Yes, this is one of our challenges because we need to produce more and stop to import so many things, food, basic food. So yes, we need to work on that. We have some big farms, but they are few, and they are not enough to all of us. So that's it in Angola.
And when we say big farms, it's not like 1,000 acres or something. Maybe 50 to 100
Yes.
acres. That's a large-scale farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I'm excited about the question. I'm not in the agricultural sector per se, but I know that Africa is 60% of all arable land, and so we are big on agriculture in Africa. And so I know Zimbabwe is also big in wheat production and corn production. So something that I found very interesting when I got to Iowa is that I was told that corn is used for animals. I was like, no. That's not right. Because for us, corn, really, we use it to make what we call sadza. What do you call it in Kenya? The white? Ugali. Yeah, ugali. And then some in South Africa call it pap. And so it is a big thing in Africa, in Zimbabwe specifically. One of our top earners brings us probably the bulk of our gross domestic product. Aside from minerals, of course, we have diamonds, and very soon I think we have oil as well. So come and invest in Zimbabwe, it's something that's nice. But agriculture is high up there. And then just to bring it home, I feel for me personally, when I interned with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, it was because I'd written an essay about the prospects of the agricultural prospects in Africa presented by agriculture. Okay, so I was linking agriculture to my technological background, and I felt it was a perfect match. Even though I'm not there yet, I think I'll be there in a few years. I'll be in that space. I think agriculture plays a huge role in Zimbabwe specifically. Thank you.
What one would like is that every country be able to feed itself.
Yeah. It's true.
You have anything to add to that?
Okay, so Gabon is most likely like Isabel described Angola. So we have small-scale farm which doesn't supply enough product for the entire market. So basically, we import most of our fresh products. So recently, the government has put in place a program to encourage people to go to agriculture, but these projects are still growing. They are not at a mature stage. So there's still a room for market penetration or positioning.
For Mauritius, agriculture was primarily one of our main economy at the time. We used to produce sugarcane, which we exported. We still have a lot of sugarcane across the island, so riding around the island is sugarcane everywhere. However, now there is a decline in the industry because we just produce it for locally, and some we export, but we can't compete with the market with the price that there is in terms of sugarcane. There are initiatives around farming, especially in like hydroponics, aquaponics farming that are being developed. And given that we're not a big island, but we are, because of our size, and our population is just 1.2 million, but we are considered like in Africa to be the most dense country that there is. So there is a high rise of urbanization in the country, which is now, I look at it as an opportunity. Actually, I already started with my backyard. I made a little crate before I came to the fellowship, where I'm trying to grow my own little garden, and I see that as an opportunity to have urban farms at your own place and to offer it as a service to communities around, because of the way the country is moving currently. But we do have a lot of land available that, and especially with the change with sugarcane, could like really bring in other crops for cultivation.
Okay. And just to add to what I'd said earlier on, maybe just to sort of clear the air. Of course, there are a lot of prospects in Africa, and especially in Zimbabwe, but we do have a lot of challenges as well. As you talked about, the idea of nations being able to feed themselves. It's still something that we still need to address. So we are still seeing nations that are still buying from other countries, and Zimbabwe is also not exempt from that. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that I'm hoping we can actually address in the near future. But it's true, of course, just to emphasize, agriculture still plays a large role in our gross domestic product as a country. Thank you.
Okay, we got a question in the back here.
Thank you. The presentation was, the panel was very, very impressive. They said a lot of things, and I have spent the past 3 weeks with them, but yet they still impress me. So I have a question for Terrance and Shameer. Firstly, Terrance, you mentioned that you're in a space of empowering the youth and helping entrepreneurs and also building strong institutions. Have you tried partnering with organizations, whether locally or internationally, to try fight xenophobia attacks on Zimbabweans that they face in South Africa? And my second question is, we see a lot of migration by a lot of Zimbabweans. And I was just wondering, since you're a leader and you went through this fellowship, what do you think your government can do to try reduce this migration? Or what will you do when you get back home to try, we're not saying people shouldn't migrate, but you'd want them to stay home and rebuild the great Zimbabwe that we know or we used to know from back then, to relive those industries again. And my question from Shameer, you spoke about how you advised your friend to put in the sexual harassment piece of information when they were applying for the Shivning scholarship. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think issues of sexual harassment in the workplace should always be dealt with discretion to protect the victim, or they should be voiced out like your friend did to raise more awareness, because these are sensitive cases that require careful investigations before a decision could be made? So I just wanted to ask you that. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for your questions. The first one, I feel it's a very layered question, something that I feel is very personal to most Zimbabweans, because we all know someone who is living in South Africa. And at a personal level, I have not been actively involved in issues of dealing, say, with xenophobic attacks. I've mainly been concerned with economic issues, but it's something that I'm truly, truly passionate about. And since you have mentioned it, I'm actually going to make it a point to see how I can be involved in that sort of space, so that I too can lend my voice and see what I can do. It's a very big issue. I think it's something that will also involve the governments of South Africa and the governments of Zimbabwe to play a part, because already there have been discussions between them. But then sometimes some of the solutions they come up with seem to be temporary. We need something that's much more long-lasting. But I guess the key at the end of the day is for us as people, I guess, to find a certain oneness where we will all be able to belong. Here's the thing. When I was at university in Zimbabwe, we had students who actually came from South Sudan, okay? And so they were surprised when they heard about these xenophobic attacks in South Africa. But they'll be wondering, how can one brother treat another brother that sort of way? But for us, we actually accommodated them. And I remember one of them actually became president of our student union, probably in their second year. We voted for that guy because he had sound policies. So I don't know what the social system is like in South Africa. But it's something that I feel is much more systemic. when it comes to issues of, I don't want, of, let's say, violence in general. In Zimbabwe, relative to South Africa, I guess there is less violence, you would say. But that's an issue that has to be analyzed further. I don't have the numbers per se, but I'm just speaking from my own observations, from what I've seen in Zimbabwe. But certainly it's something that I will look into when I get back to Zimbabwe and see what I can do as a leader to play a role in trying to change that. And then the second thing, you talked about the issue of people migrating all over. Yes, we have over 1 million people, I think, in South Africa. We have many others who are in the UK. Some of them are here as well in Zimbabwe. The issue is simple, I feel. We have to create the right sort of economic space that attracts people so that they can stay. It's all about the economic prospects. You know, people are going to South Africa because they're looking for jobs. I know that I have friends that I learned with who went to South Africa. And I remember one of them was telling me, I can't come back home because their parents, their mother and father effectively told them, you can't come back, you have to be able to find something there. And they sort of found something, but with that, there comes the issues of xenophobia and all of those sort of things. But we have to continue to play a part. That's why for me, personally, I feel that the best way is through the medium of entrepreneurship. So the other day when I was giving my talk with the fellows, I talked about my own story. I'm here today because my mother's Shani moved from she was a vendor at some point, but now she owns her own business. If that transition had never happened, really, I wouldn't be here. And so I'm seeing in myself that sort of thing. And I don't need to go to South Africa because of the journey that she walked through. And today I'm able to support myself and so many others, you know, all of us. In fact, let me say all the fellows here. Who are supporting themselves through entrepreneurship, or will support themselves via entrepreneurship. So I feel that's something that needs to happen in Zimbabwe. I'm one person who can do that, but I'm also part of it's a USAID funded program. It's called the Local Work Zimbabwe Project. So what we're effectively doing is we are going to all the provinces in Zimbabwe, especially the marginalized communities, because that's where most of the people are actually migrating to South Africa and to other countries. The idea is to say, hey, this is your area. What are your issues? How can we solve them? Once again, the customer discovery interviews. We are not coming with solutions. And then the idea this year, we start the implementation. It's a $5 million project. We've used up $1 million. There's $4 million to go. It's not enough, I understand that, but it's the start. It will help minimize the number of people who are crossing the border. And most of them are doing it using unsafe means, jumping the border, that's what we call it back home. It's not safe, it's not good. And so I feel entrepreneurship is the number one way to go through that. And yeah, through my institute as well, I hope I can do something. Thank you.
All right, that was a very tricky question you asked me. The reason I'm saying it's tricky is because I'm aware that sexual harassment, when we speak of it, it's not only subjective to one gender, but to all genders. So while I can speak for myself, I can't speak for you, or I can't speak for someone else. So how it should be addressed can be very different depending on not only the gender, but the individual themselves. However, if I'm looking at it from a holistic standpoint, I believe that organizations should create spaces that are safe enough for people who endure any kind of harassment to come forward and to be able to speak freely about it. In that way, then we can start addressing the problem. And I agree, there is always two sides of a story. There is always investigation that needs to be done. But if in the organization itself there is no policy or there is nothing that stipulates what are the steps to do that, it becomes very difficult for the person to come ahead and to say what they experience. So yeah, that would be my take on that.
Yes.
Lots of hands. Okay, I saw your hand first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really thank you so much for the presentations. Like Tapelo said, you guys have really been awesome. Mandela is quoted as saying, "I am not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." And as students of leadership, we're supposed to learn from both the good and then the bad. What do you think, each of you, what major mistakes Nelson Mandela made in your own eyes, like having led and then gone, and what can we learn from that? What major mistakes do you think he made when he was a leader, and what do we learn from that as students of leadership? So moving forward, we can avoid some of those mistakes. I know obviously he was a towering figure, right? But at the end of the day, he was still a human. So yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Interesting.
That's a difficult one to answer. I think the mistake he made was he was human. Yeah, does anyone know? Have any thought?
Thank you, Ahmed. In my opinion, yes, he was human, and we can see that. I don't like to speak about other people's contexts, but we still have challenges. That means that he had those ideas, but maybe the way that, because when we talk about what happened in the past, we need to talk about it in an honest way. And if I was speaking in Portuguese, I would say it. Sorry. We need to talk about the things in an honest way, and maybe the things they weren't discussed how they should be in a more profound way. So that's why we see, even in South Africa, we see these problems, because we have, okay, the apartheid ends, but we know the people who are in a better situation, and the people who are poorest. So I think that in practice, the problems that they faced before, they still here. So that's it. I want to.
Okay. Yes.
I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I think and this is thinking forward, when he stepped down from power, and this is my own opinion, as leader, I fundamentally believe that what you leave as a legacy is not the work that you have done, but the leaders that you leave behind. So Mandela left a gap when he went out. And we have been trying to fill that gap for quite some time. So I think if I can answer your question is, how can we, while yes, doing whatever we are doing in our own field, ensure that we are building other leaders at the same time, so that if tomorrow we are not in the picture, there is someone else that is continuing, and that would be a strong legacy.
In the interest of time, I'll move to a couple of hands that I saw, and we don't have much time, so I'll come to you.
Can I add something? Sorry, before he asks his question, I would just like to complete on what my fellows just said. For me, if I had to point out a mistake, and again, I think from another perspective, it is not a mistake. It's more on a personal side. It's the divorce from Winnie Mandela, as he was released from prison in few years later in 1996. So for me, that would be a mistake because that woman she stood by him. She was fighting while he was in prison. So for me, you don't just separate from such an ally like this. But then again, it's his own personal choice, so I can't really judge. Yeah, that's it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Edward. I come from Ghana. I'm one of the Mandela Washington Fellows. And as I can proudly see displayed, I come from Ghana. That's our flag. So first of all, I'd just like to say a very big thank you to all the Iowans. Iowa is like a home to all, myself and all my fellow colleagues now. And it's been a great time. The Iowans have been very, very warm. They've been very, very helpful, willing to connect you, willing to squeeze time out of their schedule to sit down with you, listen to your plans. And sometimes, I don't know if they are pretending, but it's really warm. Being a businessman, I thought I had to take this opportunity. I know that when Mandela came out of jail, it's also marked the revival of South Africa as a tourist destination. And today we've heard a lot of things, some negative, some positive stuff, but I just wanted to make a point that Africa also has a lot to give, apart from all the things that we've been going through. Currently, if you check, you find that 4 or 5 of the fastest growing economies are in Africa. And I like to focus on tourism. When it comes to tourism, I know in the US, it's like a tradition or a culture. Summertime, families travel to other places, have fun. That's where they bond, experience different cultures, new cuisines. And I'm just extending an invitation together with my colleagues that you should start considering Africa if you've not made it to Africa on any of your tourist trips. As we sit here, the fellows in the Mandela Washington Fellowship, we are from 20 different African countries. And if you ever wanted to come to Africa, any of these countries, you can just stretch a hand or send a message and we'll prepare for you. We need you guys to come over to our countries to experience our culture, to taste our food, see our beautiful beaches. We have so many beautiful beaches, and our food, very tasty. I know they are spicy. We will be there with you to ensure that you don't get into trouble when you eat our food. But there's so much things to do. You may have heard stories about, or you're not sure whether, if you come, is it safe? Trust me, don't believe all the news you hear. Sometimes they're just snippet, little bits all over. But majority, if you go around, I can talk to you about Ghana. You are welcome to come to Ghana. You have a great time if you come. The people are very welcoming. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to encourage that. Put Africa in your plans and come experience our culture so we can all exchange some values, and also it will bring some money to the continent and help us. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for such inspiring stories and your leadership, your vision, your entrepreneurship, your passion for where you live and come from is incredible. In my experience, when I've had the opportunity to participate in a leadership program, and this is an incredible leadership program with incredible leaders, one of the best things is just getting to meet one another and to spend time outside of your day-to-day work and your families and all the responsibilities you have so that you can be inspired by one another. So I just wanted to, and maybe this is just the right way to wrap it up, and you don't each have to answer, but I would love to hear just what has been the best thing about getting to know one another, and are you going to be able to continue this fellowship as alumni who can stay connected with one another?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are your plans to stay together?
I can. For me, it's the first time that I have this contact with people from other countries of Africa. I have friends from Cape Verde and from Mozambique, but because we speak Portuguese in Cape Verde and Mozambique, we are very few countries that speak Portuguese. So sometimes we feel a little isolated. Even with the feminist movements in different countries, we don't have as much contact as we wish. So this is the first time for me. It's a privilege. I'm loving it. I met. These are very brilliant persons, and I definitely want to maintain the contact and our friendship to grow, and yes, and be here for our continent. So that's it for me.
No one else wants to share?
So I'm going to share. So in my point of view, this whole experience is such a blessing. So every day I keep the best of the entire experience. And what I do to make this network last longer is to start discussing business opportunities with my fellows. So most of them we have already been, since day 2, we were already discussing business. And for others, I approached them for my personal project, which is a book called Back to Change the Narrative. And to be honest with you, I plan to approach all of them. So let's just say that I've started with few, but the idea is to approach all of them because I would love to hear from them. I would love them to share their stories so they can inspire other young people back home and give hope. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel, Rudy, Shameer, and Terrance for this excellent discussion session that we've got together. Thank you so much. So this was ICFRC's first program for the summer. Our next program is tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow evening, we have a film screening of the new Hollywood film. How do you call this? Oppenheimer. And in partnership with Stanley Center for Peace and Security, it's hosted at the film scene down in the Chancery here. So, and then we will return for the first in our fall semester lined up on the 24th of August. And our program is going to be at Ocknell, actually, for a program with Oksana, and who will speak about living in Ukraine. My story of an unbreakable nation. That is going to be a very interesting one. Please check out the programs at our website, and you can also actually go in there and indicate so that we know those people who are coming. But it's been my pleasure to host these wonderful people and all of you who are here. Thank you for joining us today, and we are adjourned.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys are amazing.
You made us look
I didn't know we
amazing.
could go. Yeah, you can take pictures.
Please, guys, I want to take a picture with